Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ocast, your island gateway with all things geek. I'm your host, Cal, tonight flying solo. So tonight we're exploring what happens in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, or maybe in Elizabethan England, we don't know. It's the man who brought us an interesting combination of things, Shakespeare and Star Wars together. So please welcome to the show, author Ian Doescher. Welcome to Ocast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So just to start off, so were you always a writer, or did this come later on in life, this kind of whole the Shakespeare stuff?
I would say I always wanted to write. There were many years where I thought I might write scholarly books. When I was doing education and that sort of thing, getting degrees, I thought I might write books for university or whatever. But I had not planned to do something like Shakespeare Star Wars until the idea came to me. Yeah.
And so how did you get that idea then?
So it was a combination of things happened back in 2012. Some friends and I got together and watched the original Star Wars trilogy. We just sat down on a Saturday and watched it straight through. And a couple months later, I read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which was one of the first mashup books that became really popular. And then right after that, my family and I went to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and we went down to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so I sort of attribute it to having Star Wars and mashups and Shakespeare all kind of bouncing around in my head. And it was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival when I had the idea, it'd be really fun to take Star Wars and rewrite it as though it were a play by Shakespeare.
So you're gonna, so I'm gonna be honest here. I had that same experience nearly everyone had with Shakespeare in school. It was traumatic, to say the least. It bored me rigid, and I flinch, I grimace anytime someone mentions Shakespeare to me, but I love Star Wars. So I'm coming at this. I've read the book and I loved them. I don't like Shakespeare, but I love this. So I'm always kind of curious, like, they seem like two vastly different universes you're telling them, or are they? Is there a lot of common, or did you find, wow, these are actually not that far different at their core?
Well, I think they are similar insofar as, Shakespeare was writing good stories and he was writing the popular stories of his time, right? So I think if he were alive today, he'd be writing things like Star Wars. And people have asked me over the years, oh, would this movie or this movie work as a Shakespearean adaptation? And what I've kind of decided is that any movie with a good story and good characters is going to work in a Shakespearean context, because that's what Shakespeare did was write good stories with good characters. So, and I mean, many, if not most people had the experience you had with Shakespeare, right? Where it's like, first of all, you hear about the great and mighty Shakespeare. And so even before you start trying to read him or learn about him, I think there's already sort of an intimidation that comes along with that. It's like, am I even going to get it? And then the language is hard and it's confusing, and so I really think of myself as one of the lucky ones who, when I was in high school and secondary school, I was a theater person, and so there we were in my class reading a play, and I liked the characters, and I had grown up with Dr. Seuss, so the idea of meter made a lot of sense to me. And so it made a lot of intuitive sense to me in a way that it doesn't to a lot of people. And it was also around the same time that Kenneth Branagh's early film adaptations of Shakespeare were coming out. And so it was just a good time to be a young person getting excited about Shakespeare.
Yeah, because I think that's what's, you got to look at is, you're over in Portland, you got into Shakespeare. People in the UK, my girlfriend has read Shakespeare in Polish, Germans, Chinese, everyone, and there are people in all these countries that love it. So there is some kind of universality there. Like, he is talking to something deep within, regardless of your culture, that just clicks with some people, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And because I think that so much of what he wrote about is, are things that we can all understand, right? Whether it's asking questions about life and death, or people falling in love, or, countries fighting wars against each other. These are all things that we can, there's something in Shakespeare you can cling on to, I think, no matter where you're from.
Yeah, and I think it is that expectation, and I think it is, well, at the end of the day, it's plays. Like, I've got to think of it like if 50 years from now, you know, the teachers tell Star Wars is this great, amazing thing, it's the best thing, and it was just so influential, and then they just hand in the script. Now, analyze that script for me. They're just going to go, yeah, what's this?
Yeah.
What's a Darth Vader? What's this force? That makes no sense. But when you watch it on the screen, it's just done in a way where it relates to you, isn't it? I think that's the problem with how Shakespeare's being taught at the moment.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, yes, of course, you're making a great point, which is that Shakespeare is meant to be performed, right? So if you hand somebody a Shakespeare play and say, here, read this, it is not going to have the same feeling as it is if you're in a theater watching it happen or watching a film version of Shakespeare. So that's what I mean. Whenever people ask me, how do you recommend that I get into Shakespeare? I always say, like, find a film version first, go watch the Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, so that you understand even what's happening. You get what the plot is, before you try to sit down and read it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, and I keep meaning to one day I will get round to it, but I live up here, and Shakespeare performances are quite rare, and I do have people on the who work on the podcast. You've got to give it a chance. You just not got it quite right, and yeah, it is quite hard when you've just had that assault of it in high school. It's just, and it was so dry, but and your teacher's raving about this, but it's not translating for you. Kind of, it's yeah, it's that barrier that comes up with it.
Yeah, and I will also be the first to say I don't think Shakespeare's for everybody. I mean, like, I don't, people almost like are ashamed to admit to me, because of the books I've written, that they haven't read Shakespeare, and I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. I think you can live a perfectly happy life never having read Shakespeare. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
because even if you just understand like where some of our very common sayings are coming from, that they just came, that's enough. I think even Shakespeare would just, I mean, it's like some actors, they're known for one catchphrase, and you know that, well, these people know my catch. I think Shakespeare, who was alive, say, well, doesn't like my plays, but he is quoting some of my lines, so it's made some impact somewhere, kind of. And that's kind of all a writer would want to, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, for somebody who didn't know Shakespeare at all, if they went to a performance of like Hamlet, they would be like,
Yeah,
that's where that comes from. Oh, that's where
yeah,
that comes from, yeah. Over and
yeah.
over.
Or even like I've heard of so many people first time they see The Lion King, and it's like, oh, that's familiar. That's what they were talking about in high school. The Lion King's always one that seems to break through to people quite a lot, because
Yeah, absolutely.
it is almost scene for scene Hamlet, isn't it? I think.
It's very similar. Yeah. Yeah, the plot is very similar.
And so yeah, and now the main thing, the challenge of the dialogue in Star Wars. Now it's kind of well known George Lucas is not the greatest guy with dialogue. Even he admits it himself. Was he has? He says he's got a clot ear for dialogue or something like that. I think he's once, and it's his least favorite thing to do is write dialogue. So how do you? It's very corny dialogue. I know we all quote it, but we do admit some of it is very cheesy and all that. But how do you take that and into this elegant prose and what is it they call? It's the title of the show and I've forgotten it already.
Iambic pentameter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the nice thing about Lucasfilm was that when we went through the licensing process with them, they understood what this concept was, and really sort of encouraged me to have fun with it, right? So I felt the freedom to say, okay, Luke might have a simple line here, and maybe, yeah, like you said, maybe it's not the greatest line in the world, but maybe I can take it and turn it into a longer speech or something where he's talking a little bit more about what's going on with his feelings and that kind of thing. So uh, I did have a lot of sort of artistic license to, I don't want to say improve things, but to add things, and to make it a little deeper and get into characters' minds a little more, I'd say.
So we'll take an example like from the first film, a fair where he's whining. I was going to Toshi's station to pick up those power converters.
Take these two over to the garage, will you? I want them
So
cleaned up
how
before
do
dinner.
you
I was going to Toshi's station to pick up
is
some
this even
power
a word?
converters.
Shakespeareify. That's kind of the dictionary, people. But how would you Shakespeareify kind of something like that?
Well, it's so. I mean, I don't know. Let me pull up the manuscript to the first book, and I can tell you because I don't. I mean, that was so long ago. Who knows how I did that? But It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that one, right? Because some of the parts that were that were hardest for me to do were the lines that are sort of the most famous, right? So that's one there, right? So I can see, looking at my adaptation, what I did was say, but Tashi Station wish I to go to, and there obtain some power converters. Phi. So it's actually not that much different. I would say the more famous the line is, probably the closer I kept it.
So
You know, yeah.
So I'm guessing then Yoda being so quoted must have been one of the biggest challenges because it's so memorable, that syntax he has and
Well,
those
so
lines that people just quote in their everyday life sometimes.
yeah, for sure. And one of the interesting things with Yoda was that when the first book came out for A New Hope, right? People kind of said, "Oh, now everybody sounds like they are Yoda," because with iambic pentameter, you often are playing around with word order. And so when it came to do Empire, I knew I had to do something different. And what I ended up doing was putting all of Yoda's lines in haiku, which is not a Shakespeare thing. Like we have like Shakespeare probably didn't know what haiku was at all, but it's very much in keeping with the spirit of my books, which is like, this is fun and let's have a good time, right? So Yoda speaks all of his lines in haiku because I just thought I have to do something to mark the fact that Yoda's speech is different.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or did you ever think maybe I'll just have him speak normally compared to all the other?
I
Was that an
absolutely
idea?
did. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I had several ideas of what to do with Yoda. And in fact, haiku was the one I came to last and that sort of hit me. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably the way to do it. But yeah, having him speak as a modern person actually was, I thought, instead of saying do or do not, there is no try. What if he was like, oh, come on, just do it. You're being ridiculous, but, but I decided once I had the haiku idea, I was like, that seems to fit.
And yeah, I gotta think like and the other thing with Star Wars is those fantastic battle sequences. So how do you translate like, the trench run when they're talking over the radios? That's not something Shakespeare ever envisioned. So
Yeah,
that must have
so
been a challenge.
there are a few different ways of handling some of the action sequences. I mean, first of all, I try as much as possible to like think of, okay, how would this actually go on a stage? How might this actually, be translated to a stage? And there are definitely scenes that stretch the possibility of that. But in Shakespeare, Shakespeare sometimes had well, in sometimes in battle scenes, especially in some of the histories, he'll have different like messengers basically run in and talk about what's happening, and then they leave and somebody else comes in and talks about what's happening. And so that was how I handled the pod race scene and when I got to
All
the
right.
Phantom Menace. Sometimes famously in Henry V, a chorus character describes a lot of the action that's going on and basically says, let your imaginary forces work. And so I use that sometimes. And with things like, people flying around, I was, uh, my publisher found a wonderful illustrator for my original books. And he really helped imagine what these might look like as plays. So in one of his drawings, you have, some starships that are in a battle, but you can see like that they're all on wooden sticks, right? As though they're like puppets that are being, manipulated. And so that kind of thing I think is really fun because it helps you say, oh, okay, I guess I could see how they might do this on stage.
Almost like Punch and Judy in a way, kind of.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like, I'm going to say, what was the one probably? What was the hardest film to Shakespeare? I'm going to keep using that word. I like it. Shakespeareify of the out of the it's nine now, nine Skywalker movies.
Mm-hmm.
Which one was did you find the toughest to translate?
I mean, I don't know if there was a toughest movie. There were sort of tough choices all along the way, right? So when I got to Phantom Menace, it was like, what am I going to do with Jar Jar Binks, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, either you love him or you hate him, and a lot of people hate him, and so I was like, I got to do something with him to figure out what he's going to be like. And then when I did Attack of the Clones, the love scenes between Anakin and Padme are, you know,
Yeah.
kind of,
Infamous.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right, kind of painful
Like,
and not altogether convincing. And so I tried to I tried to add in more dialogue and basically turn those into love scenes that were a little more believable, without actually changing the shape of the movie.
yeah. So I guess you leaned into Romeo and Juliet quite a bit there.
What
That
I
idea.
actually did with them was I gave them throughout my books I throw in references to real Shakespeare, and so what I did with Padme and Anakin in that book was give them, basically they use lines from just about every set of Shakespearean lovers as a way of sort of being like, everybody's going to help out, who help them out in terms of getting together.
Yeah, because, well, I've got to ask you, because people will be, seeing as we've got on to Attack of the Clones. So the sand line, that must have been, what do I do here?
And that's another one where I don't remember what I did. But yeah, I mean, there are lines like that where it's like, oh, this line is famous for being awful, and it is awful. And what I probably did with that one is you know, made it sort of almost a what's the word I'm looking for? Like sort of a meditation on the word sand
Yes.
is like the sort of thing that I think I probably would have done. If you give me 2 seconds, I can probably
All
find
right.
it.
Yeah.
But you know, this is how Anakin said what he says about sand. He says, "For me, the sand hath never been a balm. On Tatooine, we are encumbered by too much of its most coarse and unkind touch. It is an ever-present irritant, not like the peaceful sands of thy Naboo. Here all is soft, like cheeks upon a babe, and smooth as sculpted alabaster, too." Right? So, very different. We're in a very different place than than Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah, I mean, I will say that that's the one when I do my rewatches, Attack of the Clones is a struggle to watch. And I don't like saying that because we've interviewed the creatives, and I'm always wary. They put so much work in, and it must hurt them. They put so much work in, and then people just reject it. It's kind of, and they put a lot of themselves into it. Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I'm sure it is hard. And what I will say about there are moments of every Star Wars movie that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And there are certainly Star Wars movies that I watch less than I watch the other movies. And Attack of the Clones is one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were talking about Lucasfilm, they were quite supportive towards you, or at least encouraging of this. And I've heard that a lot from people who, when they do their own inspired projects and they approach Lucasfilm, they've been very, very encouraging to a lot of people, haven't they?
I mean, yeah, at least in my experience, yes, they were wonderful. They were actually the ones who originally, I mean, my first draft of the manuscript, I stayed very close to the original dialogue because culturally we sort of think of George Lucas as a person who is sort of litigious and might not like you messing around with his stuff. But they were the ones who really came back and said, have more fun with it. Go ahead and like play with it a little bit. And that was when I went. They asked me to revise a couple of scenes to like see if I could have more fun with it. And that was when in my original book, I have R2D2 in his asides to the audience. He speaks English, and you basically get a sense of like what's really in his head, because now when he turns to the audience, he's not just speaking in beeps and squeaks. He's speaking in English. So, and they liked that, and they let me do it. Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever had direct feedback from George himself, or do you know that he's aware of this? Or
I assume was at least aware of the idea initially. When we first pitched the idea to them, it was just before Disney bought Lucasfilm, and so my assumption is that he would have been aware of the project back then. Yeah.
and I'm gonna did things change for you when Disney took over, or was it were your dealings with Lucasfilm just carried on? Did they?
I think, I mean, I guess I have always felt like I was really lucky because the purchase of Lucasfilm by Disney, that happened as we were working on the first book. So it was before the first book was ever published, and Disney absolutely could have pulled the plug on it, and they didn't. So um, so no, I would say that at least for me as the author, my editor might have a different answer, but I think for me as the author, not a lot changed when Disney was in charge.
And so I'm looking at you. You've gone well into Star Wars there. Like you've done Clone Wars books and all that as well, I believe.
Not Clone Wars, no.
Sorry.
I just came out with a Mandalorian book for the
All
first
right.
season of The Mandalorian. But so I've done the original 9 Skywalker saga movies, and then this first Mandalorian book, and then I have one coming out for the first season of Ahsoka that comes out in September.
All right. And was Mandalorian I mean, actually that would have been quite straightforward because just from my limited knowledge, probably like Merchant of Venice vibes quite going on quite heavy in the first season, isn't it?
I guess I'd say a bit. The challenge with The Mandalorian was that rather than a 2-hour movie, which is roughly the same length as a Shakespeare play, now you've got an 8-episode season. So there's just a lot more material there to deal with. So that was the biggest challenge with adapting that one.
Yeah, and then you've got like the fact that Mando and Grogu don't share too much dialogue at times. It's like very much he's monosyllabic, but again, that's Pedro Pascal's amazing performance. He conveys. And so, did you find that like kind of trying to get Mando into Shakespeare mode is a bit of it to make it convincing kind of thing?
Well, yeah. So what I'll say is that Mando speaks probably 10 times or 20 times as much in my book as he
Yeah,
does in the actual shows,
yeah,
right? Because you're right. I mean, he's a man of few words in the show, and you just can't do that in a book. It would be a short and boring book if Mando's lines were as short as they are in the shows. And the benefit of that is that I got to, like I said, dig into his character a little bit more and have him talk about, oh, here's what's going on in my mind right now, as I do this thing.
and just to go in a wee bit away, like I said, I've got the website up here. So, I see you did Back to the Future. I will get you Back to the Future.
Yeah. So after we did the prequel books and with my old publisher Quirk, we did the original trilogy, then we did the prequels, and the sequel series didn't exist yet. So they were like, let's do some other books, and they had already done a children's version of Back to the Future, and so they already had a good relationship with Universal, and so they said, would you like to do Back to the Future? And in fact, they pitched me doing Back to the Future and Mean Girls at the same time. And so
Right.
I did both of those, and those came out on the same day when they came out. And they sort of launched this what Quirk called the Pop Shakespeare series. Yeah. So, and that was great fun because Back to the Future is another one of those that I grew up with and just love. So.
And I'm really curious, like, because we always imagine, like I said, I imagine, and a lot of school kids imagine Shakespeare as this ivory tower kind of thing. Have you had any pushbacks from any of the serious Shakespeare community? And it was, you're devaluing, why are you doing this?
No,
None at all.
almost none at all. I mean, I think I saw one thing when my very first book came out that basically was like, well, this is clearly not Shakespeare. And it's like, yes, of course it's not Shakespeare. Like, I don't claim to be, the genius that he was, right? And
Yeah,
I would certainly never say that my books are what his plays are.
yeah.
But actually, I think by and large, I would say people in the Shakespeare world basically love anything that helps Shakespeare continue to be relevant.
Yeah.
And so I've actually had great support from the Globe Theater, from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust in Stratford, from the Folger Shakespeare Library here in the States. I've had nothing but support and goodness, and also professors of Shakespeare and things like that. Everyone has been very supportive, I would say.
Yeah, because it is something I have noticed when I've gone on, in preparation for this. I went online and looked up some of like how teachers approach children who are not engaging with it and all that. And a lot of it is like, get them a graphic novel, get them a movie, an anime, there's mangas, and it's like, because I think a lot of people do think, it's a very academic and dry thing, and they're very protectable, but they're like, anything that gets this out and gets people engaged with it, they seem to back it so heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've heard from a lot of teachers and parents who basically say, we gave our child or our students your book first, and that gives them iambic pentameter, and it gives them some of Shakespeare's language and just a sense of the overall structure. And so then it's like a shorter leap into real Shakespeare.
Yeah, because suddenly it's relatable, this thing, because like, what kid hasn't watched Star Wars at some point?
Right.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I am going to be giving a Shakespeare another go. I've been unfair on him, I think.
Well, good luck.
Oh yeah, even if I don't, because there is some people, like, when you say you don't like it, they're like aghast. How can you? You just have it all? You've not, and it's like, some people can just genuinely not like it. That's like with anything.
Right.
And
I mean, like with Star Wars.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Because it's interesting what you say, because, with the Shakespeare community so supportive, because, these days, how fans react and defend their franchises online. It's quite toxic, and it's quite interesting that the Shakespeare community, you would think they would be the gatekeepery ones, but it's like these modern franchises now, that's the ones people get really defensive about.
Yeah, that's true. That is interesting. Now, if I were taking one of Shakespeare's actual plays and, fiddling with it, maybe they would have had more negative things to say. But no, everyone in the Shakespeare world has been great.
Yeah, because see, there you even went into Avengers with Marvel, and some people, but I just think, well, that's fairly some of these characters are just Shakespearean in their own way, like just from the off start.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, and that was a fun project, because that was one where Marvel actually approached my
All right.
publisher and said, "Hey, we want our Avengers movies to be turned into Shakespearean adaptations, and we want your guy to do it." So they basically came to us and said, "Would you like to do this?" And I was thrilled, because it was, I've been a fan of the Avengers movies, and so that was a fun one to do.
Yeah, because I'm guessing someone like Thor, for example, that's just almost the easiest character to make Shakespeare, because he speaks like that anyway.
Right, he's very bombastic, and he feels very much like a Shakespearean character. Yep.
And so, how do you, again, my favorite word of the night, Shakespeareify Hulk? Then that's good.
I gave him some. He doesn't have much dialogue. He had, if my memory serves, and again, I'll pull it up here and see what I did. But my memory is that he basically has sort of a. Yeah, I think he only kind of has roaring sounds. I don't think he actually has.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually has any real lines. So, yeah. I mean, of course, Bruce Banner does, but Hulk doesn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because it's like, I guess some people would think, they're a bit like someone like Rocket Raccoon, but I would guess some people say, well, he's very Shakespeare, that kind of comedy he has, those, because Shakespeare was a lot about the one-liner and the put-down. He had some like really cutting put-downs at times, Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think that basically any movie with good characters can be translated into Shakespeare, right? Because he did the comedy, he did high drama, he did all of it.
Yeah, because looking for something, and it was something one of it, and I don't know if you know of anyone that does, because we'd love to do, because if you've looked at our podcast, you probably realize we do a wrestling segment, and someone had the idea exploring like wrestling promos as Shakespeare. And I was like, and I said, that's it, but I can't find any resources or anyone unless we try it ourselves somehow. But again, people would say wrestling storylines, again, it's all universal themes all the time. Like even like wrestling is seen as trash entertainment, but my two co-hosts that I do the wrestling show with, they're like, look, they can be the most technically gifted wrestlers, but if the stories and the characters aren't good, we would switch off in a second. And that goes for everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there aren't a whole lot of new stories and new plots out there. So, and wrestling is so much about sort of, the good guy versus the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
And they deliver lines to the audience, and it's, huge character. And Shakespeare, again, I think is huge characters, isn't it? Bigger, larger than life characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, is there anything you would really, is there any Shakespeareifying again, that you would love to do, but you haven't been able to, or they said, no, thank you?
I mean, in the Star Wars realm, I'd love to do Rogue One. Rogue One is one of my favorite of the films.
All right.
I would, in terms of ones that I've been asked or that I've asked to do, and they said no, thank you. My editor had me pitch Jurassic Park, a Shakespearean Jurassic Park, to the movie makers and the Crichton Estate, and we included some speeches where dinosaurs were having speeches, and because that's the kind of thing I've done in my books, and they were like, we don't think talking dinosaurs is works. So fair enough. Yeah. So there have been some throughout the years that I have wanted to do or haven't been able to do. Yeah.
And like again, and I'm guessing because you did some classic horror as Shakespeare. Was that easier than Star Wars? Because it's kind of older language and references anyway. Was that a kind of easier fit?
In a lot of ways, yeah. Especially well, yeah, all of the classic horror that I did, which is Dracula, Frankenstein, and Jekyll and Hyde, and I also did A Christmas Carol, and all of those, because those are sort of already antiquated English, and so there's it certainly lends itself to Shakespeareifying more than lightsabers and blasters.
Yeah. And was any of them more challenging than the others, like of the horror trilogy, would you say?
Well, with something like, I mean, I would say both Frankenstein and Dracula, those are big books, and so just figuring out how to condense the plots into a manageable way. Well, and then Jekyll and Hyde was the opposite problem, because Jekyll and Hyde is actually very short, and so filling that out into enough of a play was also a challenge. So yeah, I would say the biggest challenges there were like how are we going to make this a manageable Shakespeare-sized play?
Yeah, and is that more of a challenge when there's less material to go off on than there's too much? Would you say what's the?
I would say it's yes, although both are challenging. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's probably more of a challenge when there's just a lot you need to add.
Yeah, and you also kind of almost, for lack of a better word, you would have to get into Mary Shelley's brain and think, well, what's these extra bits, and then how do I make that into Shakespeare? Which I'm not putting you down, but trying to think and write like Mary Shelley would be a massive challenge for anyone, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like one of the great writers of all time, and so I was just thinking, and so I think one of my friends wanted me to ask you this: is the one Star Wars project he's interested? Would you ever do Caravan of Courage?
I don't know Caravan of Courage. There's a lot of Star Wars out there that I have yet to.
You don't know the two very, very cheap Ewoks films that came out in the 80s.
Oh no, I have not seen them.
Oh no,
I know.
I don't know.
There was somebody asked me once if I would do the Star Wars holiday special.
Yes,
that's a similar sort of idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very famous for like 20 minutes of Wookiee, so no subtitles, just Wookiee noise.
My goodness, it is.
I've watched it.
Yes, I have too, and the Wookiee scenes are just like bewildering. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's not only that, it's what's the other that bizarre sequence when the cute gives to the elderly Wookiee, and it's implicated that he's giving him a porno. That's the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Watching
very
this,
weird.
Watching this weird. Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it gets it's very 70s, and yeah, there's I think someone famously once said one of the main stars of that film was cocaine. I think.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And have you had any contact with any of the actors at all from any of it, like who've read it or?
I really briefly read. I really briefly met Mark Hamill, but the one big actor wise, the one big moment was this was at Star Wars Celebration in I think 2014, and they were interviewing Ian McDiarmid on the stage, and they must have, of course, with these interviews that are on the big stages there, I'm sure that they sort of rehearse them beforehand or whatever, or like sort of know what the answers are going to be. But they asked him, they said, what are as a Star Wars fan yourself, what is some of your favorite Star Wars merchandise out there? And he said, well, I rather like those Shakespeare Star Wars books. And and I wasn't there, so but all immediately, like, friends who I had were texting me about it, and then they pulled out a copy of my Return of the Jedi, and they had him read
I've seen that clip.
Yes,
yeah. I'll read the stage direction just before. It says, Emperor Palpatine strikes Luke Skywalker with lightning that flows through his hands. Luke falls, Darth Vader rises. Then Luke says, oh, agony, as well he might. Mark should be here to do that.
Yeah.
But he's in the building somewhere. Here we go. Young fool, 'tis only now in this thy final living moment thou dost comprehend thy folly and my might. Thy feeble skills are nothing when compared to all the power of the dark side. Thou dost pay the rightful price for thy severe and utter lack of vision. Aye, thy debt is due, and I am both thy creditor and thy collector too. What thou hast not repaid with thy relief, I shall exact from thine own flesh. And lo, what joy it brings to charge thee thus. My payment justly earned, to wound thee, hurt thee, break thee, and at the last, to bring thee to the death that I am owed.
Yeah, had him read a speech as
it was
the Emperor.
That must have been.
I mean, yeah,
that made it all worthwhile, right? Didn't it?
Yeah.
Because I've heard him do some audiobooks. If you ever interested, look up. He does a solo narration of Paradise Lost.
Cool.
And as you can imagine, his Satan voice is just wow. I hate to say it, Ian, but you were born to play Satan. I don't know how you take that's good, but no, you'll find it. It's on YouTube, and it's just. Well, and I think he's like meant to be the loveliest human. Like, for some reason, we keep talking about this. Why is it all these people, supremely evil people, they turn out to be just the loveliest folk you could ever meet?
Right, yeah.
Because in a few weeks, I think we've got Doug Bradley coming on Pinhead from Hellraiser.
Wow,
and he's been
cool.
Nothing but sweet and welcoming and accommodating. But you're like this evil demon. How do you do that? But I think a lot of it is, I think they just like the fun of being a bad guy, just being letting loose like that. It's a release for them, kind of. I get to be bad and just love it for a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, because I'm thinking like the Emperor already. He's Yeah, it's, like I keep saying, they're all very like the Emperor, especially, is a Shakespearean villain, isn't he? Just he
Yeah.
was, and he's a Shakespearean actor. So again, that must have just been an open goal for you to write
Yeah,
that.
I mean, the Emperor and Darth Vader, both of them. I mean, I just love writing for villains anyway, right? It's so fun to I guess it's the same sort of thing, right? For me, like getting to get inside somebody's head and write like the worst thing you can imagine. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and then even with the prequels, you've got Christopher Lee as Count Dooku, and like that just must be. I'm writing this, and you're just imagining that booming voice of his just reading those lines.
Yeah,
That must have
and
just been, even in the writing process, that must have been a joy to do.
absolutely, and Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan. I mean, Ewan McGregor for that matter. So yeah, I mean, it never has felt like work sitting down and doing these books. It just is fun. Yeah.
No, it's yeah. I mean, the fact that I've listened. Have you listened to the audio versions? I'm guessing yet that they're on Spotify.
I have. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what did you make of it? Did you think they captured it well?
I thought they were great. I've actually gotten to know some of the people who worked on those, and in fact uh, at a different Star Wars celebration that I was at, we did like a reading from the stage with some of the audiobook
All right.
cast, and that was really fun. So yeah, I mean, I thought they were great, and they pulled together a lot of the people who narrate Star Wars audiobooks anyway, and so you've got people who can do lots of different voices, and so I thought they
Yeah.
were really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So you met like Ashley Eckstein and all of the any of them? Like, oh God, yeah, I would love to. She seems fantastic. I'm guessing they always tend to be just lovely folk, the actors, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think I mentioned. Is there anything else in Star Wars you want to touch on? Is it just, well, you mentioned Rogue One, but aside from that, there's the Mandalorian Grogu film, which I'm guessing, will you be watching that with one eye on?
Always, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm looking forward. I mean, that was part of why they wanted to do this Mandalorian book was, sort of let's get it out right before the movie comes out. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, Rogue One is the big one there. Uh, but I'd probably be happy to take on just about any of it.
'Cause, also read you're a Star Trek. Now, I'm a big Star Trek fan. Have you been tempted to go there? But I'm guessing
Absolutely,
because,
yeah.
yeah,
I grew up with
the
watching Star Trek,
yeah.
the original series, and then the original movies, and so it would be fun to do. What would be fun to do would be a 3-book arc where you did the Wrath of Khan, the Search for Spock, and the Voyage Home. Would be my idea of a good time.
See, what I'd be interested in is if you did Star Trek 6, because you've got Christopher Plummer's character who's speaking in Shakespearean
That's
dialogue
right.
already. So what do you do there? Do you have him haiku, or would you just have him speak, or have him speak
That's a great question. Yeah, yeah. What
or
do you
speak
do
in
when?
or the other one is speak in technobabble?
Right. Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah,
he starts quoting like Christopher Marlowe or something like that instead of instead of Shakespeare.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Yeah.
yeah. So, oh, yeah. I would be very interested. Like again, like Star Trek 2, just the Wrath of Khan would just seem like such a natural fit because it's already Moby Dick, but I think there's King Lear in there. I read it's actually on Khan's bookshelf, if I remember right, in that film.
I think that might be right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I think he
yeah,
does quote some King Lear during the film, doesn't
yeah.
he?
I think that's right. Yeah.
And it's because I said, like, if you pay close attention, it's Moby Dick, King Lear, and Paradise Lost are the 3 books on, and they're like basically those are all elements in the film, and at times it's like word for word lines that he's quoting.
Yeah. Yep.
Because yeah, you get to because he does actually do a Shakespearean Star Wars. I remember he says that's from Moby Dick, isn't it? From Hell's Cold Heart, but no,
That's
what's
from
the one I'm thinking?
That's Moby Dick. But he
I'll
does.
chase him round
Yeah.
the moons of Nebula and the Mutaran and this Nebula and to hell and back to get him and all this. And he's just like putting in planets and all that instead of like, it was the Cape of, I can't remember the exact dialogue it was, but yeah, there's that already existed there, like Star Trekifying.
Right. Right.
A classic text, yeah.
The other thing I
Well,
thought actually with Star Trek, the other thing I thought would be fun would be to take take a Shakespeare play and put Star Trek characters in it, right? So
Oh,
take
right.
something
Reverse.
like the Tempest, yeah, sort of reverse, right? So take the Tempest, but have it be about you know, Kirk being abandoned on a a planet somewhere, and anyway, yeah.
I would love something done with Deep Space Nine because I'm a massive Niner all the way through. But it's like a Shakespeare Deep Space Nine or a Deep Space Nine Shakespeare. I don't know if I'm getting that right away, right?
Yeah, and that's one I'm less familiar with, right? So it's interesting. Once I sort of hit high school and college, and then family life, I got to know less Star Trek. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, have you kind of, has it just been mostly Star Wars you've been, obviously with all these projects, you've been just investing more in start your time and energy kind of more in it?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say it really is because of, it's not necessarily because I like one or the other better. It's just
Yeah.
that's, these books came around, and so Star Wars has sort of taken over. Yeah.
And I guess, what do your kids make of this? It must be cool to have a dad who writes Star Wars books for a living.
I think they think it's fun. Yeah, I hadn't shown them. So when the first book started happening, they would have been 9 and 7, and
Yeah.
I had not let them watch Star Wars yet, and so that was
All
one of the
right.
first things we did when the book started happening. I was like, okay, boys, let's sit down and watch Star Wars together. And so yeah, I think, and they've been to more book readings than I've dragged them to all kinds of things, but we've also gotten to do a lot of fun things together as a family because of it. So like we went to Comic-Con in London together because of my books and things like that. So yeah, I think they think it's fun.
Okay, and I don't know how I missed this one, which is quite interesting because Mac Trump.
Yeah.
So can you
So
tell us a little? Yeah, yeah. Let's just talk about that one. I'm
yeah,
curious.
so what happened with Mac Trump was I don't even, gosh, do I even remember how? Well, I remember how the idea came around. So I actually read a book by a guy he uses the pen name um, Jacopo della Quercia, and he has a book that basically is like the basic plot of the book is it's about Shakespeare in Shakespeare's time, but Shakespeare is very much a James Bond kind of a character. And so he had written this novel, and I reached out to him and I just said, "Hey, I like your novel. It's fun." He and I started talking, and he is somebody who actually has worked on some. I think he worked on Obama's campaign and things like that, and so we sort of came up with this idea, like, let's write a Shakespearean. Let's write a play together that is basically a Shakespearean take on Trump's first 2 years in office, but very much fictionalized, right? And in the, I mean, some parts are similar to events that actually happened, and then other parts are just totally made up. So we actually wrote it very quickly and we wrote it all like over Google Docs. He lives 3,000 miles away from me, so we sort of would go back and forth, and wrote it pretty quickly, hoping that it would come out, in like while it was still relevant. It was still a relevant storyline, and yeah, it was fun. It was a fun project.
So did you get pushback? Because then you're delving into politics, and given I've had some experience with just a bit. I've found cousins in America who were Trump fans, and it can be quite fiery at times dealing with some of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I only got a little bit of pushback. I mean, there were certainly people who were, who would comment online and be like, stick to Star Wars, knock it off, stop doing this, but I didn't ever have anything like really serious or bad. Yeah.
Which I always find that hilarious when people tell writers and creators stay out of politics, and they say, well, it's there in my work, my politics. You can't
Right.
avoid it. It's gonna.
Right.
No, I'm just saying, it's very interesting because I could tell you something like if you go out that road, walk up there, and then turn left, in about 3 minutes, you'll come to the house where Mary MacLeod was born, his mother. I'm
Wow.
like literally,
Wow.
and I see his cousin every day, and it's I could tell, like I've told this story before. My mum went to school with one of the other cousins, and it said he was the physical double and had the mannerisms, but with my kind of Hebridean accent.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
when she sees Trump, it breaks her brain because she just thinks of her cousin in school. not this, not the Trump that we see every
So
day.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I say, and if you're wondering, he does not talk about it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He just says, "Nope, I'm not speaking about that at all."
I can
He
imagine.
keeps
I
it.
can imagine. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, like on the second time he was elected, CNN just did knock on my door, asking if they wanted to speak to him. But I was like, I don't know him. He doesn't know him. So
Yeah.
I do.
Wow.
He's been here. He's actually been here once to this village where I am. If you look online, just Donald
Crazy.
Trump, Ira Lewis, you'll see him standing outside a house, and that's literally 3 minutes from my doorstep. He was there.
Wow. Wow. Crazy.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
and to tell you something even funnier, like see that first time he was elected, they showed on TV, and it was like, you know, when Obama got elected, and they showed his grandmother was in Kenya, is from Kenya, isn't it? I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And they showed
Yeah.
like her village, and they were all out singing, dancing. Wow, one of ours done so well. And then they cut to up here in Stornoway, the Hebrides, when Trump got elected. It was like grey sky, I remember. It was raining, and they had the cameras, and everyone was just looking and just darting into shops and just, no, no, no. Yeah, that's how we feel.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was, and no, just even attempting that to even feel a bit of nerve saying, oh, this could. Was there any nervousness about, you know, taking on Trump in a book? Like,
A little bit.
or the kind of explicit and political
little
like
bit.
that?
A little bit, but this was also back in during his first term, and things were not as dark as they've become. So so there was a little bit of nervousness about that, and there was never anything. I mean, yeah, there was never any like pushback from that sort of level. Would I do it again today? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm guessing it'd be a bit riskier. Well, I don't know.
Well,
Might
and part of
it be risky to yourself?
I mean, potentially, but also it also like I just don't know if it. I just don't know if that book would be funny these days, right?
Yeah,
Like
of
like
course.
it was something that we could maybe laugh about during the first term, and now it's not. Now it's not funny.
Yeah, it's like I've got a friend and he's a stand-up comedian. He said the first time he got in, you know, the jokes came easy, but he said, I'm finding it difficult to do jokes about, you know, Trump and, you know, world politics now because it's just so depressed. Like
Yeah.
usually comedy's about mining these bits of humor out of, I said, it's gone beyond absurdity into just complete lunacy now, isn't it?
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's yeah. So I'm just not sure. Like, I just think it would be a depressing book to write and to read, probably.
Yeah. So we'll go on back on to something a bit lighter to as we come to the Christmas Carol, like Dickens as Shakespeare. Was that another easy fit, or because he's got a very specific style as well, doesn't he?
Language wise, it's a pretty easy fit, you know, because Dickens's language is certainly closer to Shakespeare time wise. That was one that essentially it was one of those ones where I had the idea late at night, kind of lying in bed, and like and the sort of thing that I did with Christmas Carol is that all of the characters, all of the sort of minor characters, all the characters except Scrooge himself are based on Shakespearean characters. So Bob Cratchit is called Benedict Cratchit, and he's like Benedict from Much Ado About Nothing, and like young Scrooge and his fiance are Romeo and Juliet and things like that. So I had the idea and was like getting so excited thinking about it that eventually it was like, I'm just going to get out of bed and like start working on this because I'm clearly not going to sleep right now. And so, and it also, I mean, in terms of the 5-act structure, it lends itself really nicely to, you know, sort of the you know, Scrooge at the beginning, and the visit from Marley, and then, you know, 3 ghosts, and then the Scrooge at the end, right? So it's a really nice, easy 5-act structure, and It was so fun. It was great fun, and that was one actually where during COVID I decided because that was one that I self-published, and during COVID I produced an audiobook of it with having friends do it, and that was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely one I think I will visit because I've got such fond memories of Christmas Carol. Um, that's one book I read, and it was actually my great grandfather's original copy of the book he had, which is
Cool.
from 1900 and something, and with a signature on it. It was like, and my mum still keep, and she let me read it as a child. Just said, "Please be careful, don't damage it." And I was like, and it was just those, those quaint drawings they had, and
Yeah.
I was just mesmerized by it, and then of course, but these days it's the Patrick Stewart version I always go to when I want to get my Christmas Carol fix. It is
Yeah.
it's a necessity of Christmas Day for me. That
Yes, for me it's the Muppet version that I
yeah,
really
that's
like.
yeah. Myself and my ex-girlfriend had many an argument at Christmas. Was it the Muppets or Patrick Stewart? But I said Picard version. Come on now, come
Sure,
on,
fair.
Picard.
Yeah.
Beats Kermit the Frog any day in my view. But we've all got our tastes. I just say, but you're just wrong. I told her, but maybe that's why she's my ex. And the last project I see is I Wish I Had a Wookiee. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I really enjoyed and have enjoyed all of the Shakespearean adaptations, but I was essentially talking with my editor at Quirk and said it'd be fun to do something that's not Shakespeare, and and he suggested what if we tried to stick with something that is verse, because he said, what he said to me once is your superpower is verse, and so we talked about different things we might do, and basically I had the idea, well, what if you did a book that was sort of based on Shel Silverstein. I don't know if Shel Silverstein is big in the UK, but Shel Silverstein is a person who wrote poems for kids, often sort of irreverent poems for kids, and uh, so it'd be fun. I said it'd be fun to write some of those, but based on Star Wars, and Star Wars characters and that kind of thing. And so that's what that book is. It's a children's book of poetry they're fun poems, silly poems, all about Star Wars. It's also a rare Star Wars book. I don't want to say the only because I don't know that for a fact, but I think it's one of the only Star Wars books that is really about like people in our galaxy encountering Star Wars, as opposed to like set in the Star Wars galaxy. So
All
anyway,
right.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Lovely. And so was that your first time doing kind of children's writing?
It was.
And
Yep.
is that a different challenge to write for kids than doing the
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I wrote something like 200 poems for that, and I think about half of them are in that book, because you do have to get the tone just right, and I definitely wrote that many knowing that they would be cut down. There were some that I wrote that were probably too serious for kids, or a little too you know a little too silly, or like a little too, I mean, I don't want to say adult themed because that suggests something that I'm not really saying, but anyway, so like yeah, it definitely is a different challenge.
Okay, so coming up to the end here, and traditionally we just ended with a nice silly quick fire for our special guests. Are you
Okay.
good for that?
Yep.
Okay. If Yoda spoke in iambic pentameter, would anyone survive the monologue?
No.
Which Shakespeare character would absolutely lose a lightsaber fight in 5 minutes?
Hamlet.
If Darth Vader had to deliver a Shakespearean insult, which one would he use towards Luke?
Oh, he'd call him a rough-hewn craven.
Which Star Wars character is most likely to break into a full Hamlet soliloquy unannounced?
Obi-Wan.
Okay, if Shakespeare had to write a spin-off about the Ewoks, what would the tragic flaw be?
They're too cute. They're just too cute.
So, who would win in a dramatic pause context, Obi-Wan or Shakespeare?
A dramatic pose Obi-Wan.
Pause.
Oh,
Yeah.
a dramatic pause. Oh.
Yeah.
Still Obi-Wan.
Yeah. I wasn't even going to bother adding Shatner or Kirk in there. There's no contest there. Which Shakespeare play could be improved by adding one Jedi?
Any of them.
If R2-D2 could speak in blank verse, what would his first line be?
This golden droid hath been a friend, 'tis true.
Oh, that's good. Which Shakespeare villain would Palpatine adopt as an apprentice with no questions asked?
Iago.
Okay, yeah. If the Death Star had a theatre department, which play would they stage first? Which Shakespeare play?
I love this. Something like Coriolanus. Yeah.
All right,
Big,
cool.
big and military. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ian. So if people want to reach out to you and if you've got any new works or they want to get a hold of your old books, where can they find it? I'm sure there'll be a few wanting to reach out to you after this.
Yeah, I've got a website, which is just my first name and last name run together, iandescher.com. And my books are available, in bookstores. You can get them. You can find them on Amazon and other places online. So they're around.
Yeah, because that's when I first remember I was in Edinburgh once and I went into the basement. Oh, do you have Waterstones in America?
Mhm.
So I just went into the basement to the sci-fi and there's just a pile of these Shakespeare songs. And the ideas just stayed in my head. And then eventually we started doing this podcast. I thought, I remember that from years ago. So I'll reach out to the guy.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
it's been an absolute pleasure. And you said, your used book as well, if you want to give that a shout.
Sure, yeah. So I've got it right here, actually. It's the Shakespeare's The Mandalorian of Navarro. So there it is.
And it's only been out for 2 or 3 weeks now, hasn't it?
Yeah, about coming up on 3 weeks. Yep.
Yeah. And, the one question I forgot to ask, would you ever come to the Hebrides?
Oh, my wife Jennifer and I talk about going to the Hebrides all the time. So off camera, you heard me say this, but I'll say it on microphone. That we've spent a lot of time in the Orkney Islands,
Yeah.
and we absolutely love Scotland. We dream about moving to Scotland just about every day, actually. And we have not been to the Hebrides yet, but we talk about it all the time, and I would love to come. Yeah.
I can say, if you do, please come in October. I said we have a lovely little convention and we would welcome you with open arms. I think this would go down such a storm with everyone. So the door is open. Let's watch this space. You never know what will happen. Everyone, please go follow Ian, go to his website, buy his books, and give us a like, follow us, and subscribe. And it's been such a pleasure. And well, if there's any projects in the future, we can reach out again and speak then. We would love to speak to you again at some point.
Well, thank you again for having me on. This has been fun.
All right. Thank you very much. And with that, everyone, good night. Have a good rest of the weekend, and we'll all see you soon.